Welcome to this author's interview series. My name is Christina Theodoraki. I'm editor of Small Business Economics and Entrepreneurship Journal, and I have the great honor to interview today Marcus Wolfe from University of North Texas. It's a great pleasure to interview Marcus because it's the second time I see him the last days. And I interviewed Marcus Wolfe previously in another video for Small Business Economics. His first video for Small Business Economics described the paper on effects of sleep and self-employment that you can also watch in the YouTube channel of the journal. Also, I had the great honor to see Marcus at the BCLC conference at Knoxville 2 weeks ago. So welcome, Marcus, and thank you very much for participating to this new interview series and sharing your knowledge with us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Christina. I'm happy to be back again and thankful and grateful that you guys want to talk a little bit about some of the research we're doing.
Excellent. So Marcus is going to give us more insight about his new paper in Small Business Economics, which is entitled Image Isn't Everything: Personality Attractiveness, Physical Attractiveness, and Self-Employment Earnings. This article has been published in Small Business Economics in May 2023. This paper is also co-authored with Pankaj Patel from Villanova University, and who is not able to be with us for this interview today, but feel free to join the authors for more questions and insights. So let me start my first question, Marcus. Could you please tell us more briefly what is the description of this paper and what is your specific focus on this paper?
Yeah, so in this paper, we're looking a little bit more into sort of this notion of this beauty premium that we've seen across a number of different organizational contexts that really ascribes the idea that sort of physical attraction or attractiveness has some potential benefits in terms of performance outcomes and evaluations within organizational settings. And for the purpose of this study, we want to look a little bit deeper and kind of go beyond this sort of notion that sort of beauty's only skin deep. And look at some other types of attractiveness, namely personality attractiveness is sort of a more longer lasting, more enduring type of attractiveness that might have more positive benefits from a self-employment perspective. And so really what we looked at in terms of sort of the individual influences that both physical and personality attractiveness might have, but most importantly, looked at sort of the potential interactive effects of sort of having both physical and personality attractiveness and how that might influence potential self-employment earnings outcomes.
Excellent. And it's very important for us to ask in every paper article we publish this following question: why this article is important, and of course, why what we learned more that we didn't know before from this article?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that this article is important because it kind of adds a little bit more insight and nuance into, again, that's sort of longer enduring perspective that physical attractiveness is an important characteristic for us to understand. And really looks at sort of maybe some more of the facets that might influence how that has a longer lasting enduring effect. So again, this notion that physical attractiveness might be a momentary or short-term type of an influence, but what are some of the more longer-term influences that might have more of a lasting enduring effect on things like personal connections, relationships, social capital, and things like that? In terms of what we find, interestingly enough, what we actually find is that we didn't necessarily find significant individual effects, but we did find an interesting interactive effect for females who are self-employed only, which again adds some nuance into this notion that physical attractiveness is important, but also it's this interactive effect of physical and personality attractiveness for females in particular that provides a positive influence on their ability to have successful earnings when self-employed.
Attractiveness is an important topic, but I'm very curious to see where did this idea came from. Do you have any personal observation? What this paper started from? What was the initial observation?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a couple of different facets for that. One of the most important influences was we had done a previous study that looked at physical attractiveness in intelligence. And interestingly enough, in that study, we actually found that the most significant influences for only physical attractiveness were for men, not for women, which kind of goes against a little bit of what our sort of preconceived sort of accepted social norms would be, that sort of women are naturally associated as being physically attractive, men are more associated with being sort of intelligent and competent and things like that. And so the motivation that was to get a little bit more of an in-depth understanding of sort of what are these effects and influences, and what are some other ancillary factors that might actually be involved in these types of larger nomological networks around this notion of attractiveness as being an important quality for individuals to understand, and kind of delve a little bit further into sort of what are some other facets of attractiveness beyond just the mere physical approach that could have more, again, more lasting, enduring effects on things like social networks, social connections, and things like that. And we find that personality attractiveness from the literature is something that has been suggested to have a longer, more enduring effect in terms of the ability for individuals to interact and have successful connections with individuals from those types of perspectives.
Extremely interesting. And can you tell us where do you see this research on the topic going forward? Are there any new topics you are working on? What are the future directions based on this research?
Yeah, I think that there's this opens up the wide range of possibilities in terms of looking at other influences that could have an important sort of involvement in sort of how attractiveness, both physical and personality, is interpreted and influences self-employment outcomes. Everything from sort of this notion of intersectionality, but there could be some potential age effects or cultural effects, or maybe ethnicity types of influences that have a way to shape these types of interactions. And also looking at sort of other outcomes. I know that, you know, oftentimes in self-employment and entrepreneurship research, we focus on sort of the monetary outcomes and consequences of these types of things. But, you know, another aspect of my research really looks at sort of more sort of ancillary, non-pecuniary outcomes, health, well-being, stress, those types of things. You know, I think that looking at these sort of other outcomes that really are associated with self-employment and entrepreneurship as being sort of very important factors that individuals who pursue those types of occupations are very interested with. And so how do we look at sort of non-financial sort of outcome and consequences in terms of being important things to look at in terms of how these types of factors influence those types of rewards that people might get from self-employment as an occupational choice?
Excellent. It's extremely interesting when you find the difference between gender differences on your study, but also how you open all these different factors of attractiveness that they can lead to advance this recent discussion. So we're looking forward to see on this next findings. And can you please tell us more about how we can implement these findings? What will be your advices or your insights to practitioners on how to use your findings from the study?
Yeah, well, I think that, again, our findings from a practical standpoint stress the importance of, you know, sort of non-superficial characteristics and qualities that influence self-employment outcomes. You know, I mean, personality attractiveness, things like sincerity, kindness, optimism, you know, these are all things that we can inherently work at and practice and sort of initiate in terms of our relationships with others that, again, go towards building these longer term connections that can have a more enduring, lasting effect. And so from a practitioner standpoint, you know, I would say that, you know, those are important things that go beyond just the superficial, you know, physical attributes that you might have and could lead to more longer lasting, enduring effects. You know, again, practicing these types of things and aspects of personalities that people can look at and are attracted to and find comforting or find positive or find in some way, shape, or form, you know, a way to build these types of relationships that can be beneficial for them from a practical standpoint.
Excellent. And from your point of view, is there of this type of attractiveness superior than other, or it's more like a complex interconnection between all this attractiveness, or some of them can be you can have it because you were born with them, and some others you can develop during your age, or do you think that some interests would be more keen to have some attractiveness, some more or less type of this attractiveness? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I do think it is very complicated and complex. I think that depending upon the types of outcomes you're looking at, I know there's been research that says that, you know, that instantaneous physical attractiveness can lead to sort of positive initial investor analysis. So investors might find or be more amenable to sort of pitches from people who are deemed instantaneously physically attractive. But that being said, these longer term relationships and longer term sorts of performance or outcomes that we're looking at, I think are probably much more likely to be fostered and developed based upon other aspects such as personality attractiveness that do have a longer term influence on sort of interpersonal relationships, connections, and things like that. And so that end, I do think that it's a unique and complicated mixture of sort of nature versus nurture, so to speak, in terms of factors that you are born with, you might have a certain capacity for, but there's always the ability to sort of maximize and develop and leverage to the fullest extent the capacity that you have that helps sort of maximize the attractiveness, both physically and from other aspects like personality that benefit these self-employment outcomes.
Excellent. And I'm hearing you and I reflect as I hear you, and it's also quite interesting directions page, probably the link of attractiveness to the performance we would like to have to the company. For example, social companies may lead to the personality attractiveness or some of it. So it depends to the organization setting, to which one, or the industry probably, to which of this type could faucet. So very exciting topic, very exciting findings. We're happy to have published this paper in Small Business Economics. Do you have any last comment for our reader who is reading your paper, or what, or any last comment from you?
Yeah, no, I just thank you again very much. We're excited to have this research out there. To the people who are reading this paper, we welcome further investigations. Like I said, this is a fascinating topic. I think we're just starting to scratch the surface on sort of looking at, like you said, different aspects, different sort of contextual sort of configurations and how that might relate to sort of aligning so that certain types of personality might be better or more successful than others in certain areas or aspects or certain environmental contexts. And so I think this is really just the beginning for exciting new areas and aspects of research that we very much welcome and very much looking forward to sort of the growing conversations around these types of topics.
I definitely agree, and I very much look forward to read more research on this topic. So thank you very much, Marcus, for the insightful research you published and the inspiring discussion we have today. I can invite also all of our readers and listeners to go and read the paper in Small Business Economics from the website, which is available. Thank you very much. I wish you a great day.
Thank you very much, Christina. Have a great day as well.